I know you talked about it earlier, the extraneous circumstances that this league is continuing under, but how much of a shift are you anticipating? Like how many new teams will emerge under this online format as contenders now that we're seeing this entire season go online?
Yeah, no, I mean, I expect it to be kind of, a lot of people have said that online play and LAN play isn't that different. Given the circumstances of what's been happening so far, I would say that it's going to be a pretty big change. Again, it's hard to kind of really understand what exactly is going to happen. Things may change, whatever server quality or anything like that. Like the quality of life stuff for games might change to where the fairness becomes just like LAN, and then you're like, you won't see much change. But the meta of the game is also changing. Like that's the biggest thing people are kind of forgetting is that the more you play the game, the more things are figured out, and some people kind of get better at the game and through time, and some people kind of stagnate and get to a level where they don't improve anymore and they just stay there while everyone else kind of catches up. So that's going to be interesting to see. I would suspect things to change a lot. It's scary I'd say it's scary for all the top teams and not scary for the teams that have nothing to lose, because for them it's just like, this is going to be an advantage for us because whatever was working on before online wasn't working. So if we go online now, we may stand a chance and win some of these matches as long as we keep improving and making the right decisions. But yeah, no, it's hard to tell, honestly. From my gut tells me it's going to change a little bit, but my job is to try and maintain my team to the highest level, and that's all I'm going to be worried about. So whatever happens, I guess.
This might be an odd question, but do you think the meta would be influenced at all by online play versus LAN?
Oh, 100%. And that's
how so?
So, I mean, there's the latency makes a difference. This is from a history standpoint in Call of Duty. LAN play is typically always slower. There's a lot of things that change, and it's not only just because of connection, but just like sound, for example. When I play at a LAN event, everyone's playing with these in-ears earbuds under their headphones. There's a lot of ambient sound that you hear around. Nothing's ever perfect on the sound front, so just like sound whoring or like hearing people walk around is different. There's a lot less of that on LAN. The connection difference makes the camera and the kind of the latency things that you happen online when certain teams can kind of maneuver around a lot quicker because they can kind of pop around corners and kill people that are kind of sitting there holding their aim would be not the same on LAN because it's a lot harder to do it on LAN. So just the pace of play in general on LAN is a lot different normally than online just because of the sheer environment you're playing in. So that technically is going to change things just on its own, regardless of whatever connection and other elements that are kind of possible to change from a LAN to online environment. So yeah, surely the way you play the game and what you're trying to accomplish doesn't really change, but the way it's being done while it happens is going to change it a little bit. So teams may have to adapt to that. Again, like it's weird to say because all these teams scrim basically every day all week. I think most teams have one day off, so we're playing online anyways. So we practice for these LAN events, and it doesn't really change. We show up to the LAN event, we know what we need to accomplish. Like, again, it's the small things in between that change, like the sound and all those things. But beyond that, we still try to accomplish the same things. So you would think that scrims online would dictate what's going to happen in an online tournament, but so far it hasn't. So it's interesting to think. I don't know exactly what that is, if it's just the servers or whatever it is may be. But yeah, we'll have to see what kind of transpires for that for the rest of the year. But I can tell you right now, from all the results that I've seen from scrims, we see a little bit, like, for example, the Huntsman stream some of their scrims and all that stuff. Like, whatever results have happened this weekend have been kind of unforeseen, in my opinion. So who knows what's going to happen moving forward.
You even mentioned this to me when we spoke for an article I'm writing a week ago about the importance of scrims now as we move to an online league. And there was an interview with Mox after Florida defeated Chicago, and he basically said, yeah, we scrimmed Chicago this week. We knew their tendencies. It was fresh in our minds. And that's exactly what happened during the game. And I know that, like, basically you will scrim pretty much half the league every week, right? Like it's inevitable that you're going to be seeing a lot of the teams, if not every team, at some point in a 2 or 3 week rotation while scrimming, etc. But, like, how does that work now, in the sense that you got to get the practice against the top tier teams, but you don't want to give away too many of your secrets? Like, how do you balance that, especially now that you're moving online? It's going to be pretty much the same environment when you're scrimming.
Yeah, for the most part, we try not to scrim a team for the week prior, for example. So we didn't scrim any of the teams in their pool during this week to try and avoid really kind of showcasing what we had planned or whatever made strategies that could be different than when we played them last. For the most part, I don't think teams are entirely worried about that. The tendencies and elements, like, again, unless I play, like, let's say for example, we probably scrimmed Minnesota this week. Not saying that made any difference. We were beating them when we were scrimming them. But from a standpoint of like understanding and really making a difference when you play them, I don't think that's very the case. Some people might say those things. It may just be a confidence thing. But on my personal level, I feel like we could have played Toronto, Minnesota, and all the teams we played this week, and I don't think it would have changed much beyond maybe like break-offs where you start the map and what direction you go when you start a map could be a little telling. So if anything, if you repeat the same things, but mostly teams try and change those things up and try and prepare against what they feel like their team's doing. It's almost like playing poker where you feel like a team's going to do this, but they don't end up doing it. And then that's like you call the bluff or you're calling the call that they made or the raise and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's interesting to think about, but I don't think that like practicing against specific teams is really catering to helping them get better. If anything, it's just if a team's like behind in the meta and you're beating them, then you might be teaching them things that work and things they should be doing. Okay. And that's the case at any point, right? That's not just this week or the week before. Like that's literally all the time. But at the same time, you're trying to better your craft when you scrim. So your job is to try and prove out the things you learn. And that's kind of the fact now that there's only 12 teams in the league, there's not much difference in practice to go around. So if you figure something out and people are kind of catch on to it, there's no real good way to hide it. Because you're not just going to, sorry, go for it.
Oh, no, finish your thought. I have a question after that.
I was going to say like I can't really, like, for example, I figure like a play call in Ramaza for a rotation that works really well. And I do it once and it worked. I'm not just going to stop doing it. I really want to prove out that it worked. So I'm probably going to try it against a few teams. And if it really does work, then they might see that and be like, click, oh yeah, that's a really thing we need to do as well. So then it's a matter of like who's going to execute it best. And that's what happens in Call of Duty games is that the more you go through the year, the kind of the difference in meta kind of blends out to like one play style, or not one play style, but one real kind of good way to play the game. And then it's a matter of like figuring counters to that. And it's like flips on the other side of it. But for the current state, I think we're getting close to that point, but we're not quite there yet.
What do you think the next meta is going to be?
There's no specific way to say the meta per se. It's more like the nuances and how you attack certain hard points and how you rotate to certain hills or how you hold certain hills. Certain positions that you hold to hold a specific place might be different. And all of those things kind of change from online to LAN as well. Well, not necessarily hills, but like, for example, if I hold a corner around a camera that's really bad and I do that 3 or 4 times in a scrim, I know I don't have to do that anymore because it doesn't work. So I'm going to try doing something else. And then if I do that, and if the other team does the same thing and catches onto it, then that's not a thing anymore. And that's more like the nuances in the meta. There's no real good way to explain the meta. I've tried to do this many times in my career, and it's like someone's like, "Oh, Ray, what's the meta right now?" I'm like, "Well, I could probably tell you how many SMGs and ARs are being used, but beyond that, there's no real good way to explain it."
Do you think that will change? Like, are we still in an MP5 meta, or are we?
It's hard to tell. Again, it's okay. Like that's something that if anything would change drastically, that might be one of the things. It's hard to kind of dictate really right now, but just based on the fact that if maybe having more ARs is going to help you if you're playing on X server and so on and so forth. So who knows? It's hard to tell again, like since it's really fresh for everyone. So we'll have to see how people adjust.